You said that your father was an alcoholic.
Yes.
And he was not only verbally abusive, but physically abusive towards you, your siblings, and your mother.
Yes, to everybody. So it was me, my older brother, and my mother. Yes.
And when you're going through that, do you have anybody to talk to and say, hey, this is what's going on?
At that time, we didn't. Naturally, Chinese people also in our culture, just Asians in general, we're very hush hush. We're very tight lipped, meaning we don't really share or bring shame to the family like that. My mother, for example, wouldn't tell anybody as well that she was getting abused. This was just part of our culture. We don't call the police. We just handle everything in house. And yeah, so that was ingrained in me as a kid. I couldn't tell teachers. I couldn't tell anybody. My way of acting out was through violence and getting angry. So I fought a lot at school. I was suspended 3 times, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. All those years was getting, suspended. Yeah, I just found like a pseudo family. And that's why I joined a gang at the age of 12. I actually started running around with the local gang in the San Gabriel Valley, Chinese gang.
I know that you say that you started with the gang at age 12, but when did the violence and the fighting start? I'd imagine earlier than that. It's not like you just wake up and say, okay, gang time.
Yeah, exactly. It started at 10 years old. I started to steal a little bit. I started to get bullied. Where I'm from, San Gabriel Valley is predominantly a Mexican, Hispanic. So we grew up alongside the Mexicans. We grew up alongside with them, and we took a lot from their culture as well in terms of gang banging. In LA, it's very rampant. Gang banging is a culture. It really is a way of life. So yeah, we had a lot of issues with them racially at that time when I was growing up, and yeah, I started getting bullied and couldn't walk down certain streets, and I started saying, okay, I'm gonna stand up for myself. We're gonna fight. So started fighting. I got jumped at the age of 10 by 4 other people, 4 other kids essentially. Had my backpack stolen. After a while, you just get sick of it and you start to really stand up for yourself. And then yeah, I was gang started to notice, oh, this kid fights. He's not gonna sit here and just like take it. And naturally, that kind of pulled that type of energy towards me. Yeah.
But it sounds like at this point you're fighting back and not looking for fights.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%.
So essentially you're defending yourself,
Yes.
but you could tell that there is violence and anger deep down inside you that is stemming from the abuse at home.
Yes. Because when I would fight at school, especially in front of large crowds, and would get suspended for it, I started to notice that, hey, which is very corrupted thinking, but I was like, you know what? Violence is better than trying to express yourself. Like violence is a universal language. And that's just what I learned at such an early age. Like, oh, I don't have to try to talk it out. I'll just punch this guy or whatever, and which was wrong. But it really taught me at that time to like, solve things through defending myself violently, I guess. Yeah.
You say you could sense other people's pain, and as you're discussing with that other person and that other video, were you feeling pain and expressing that through your violence?
Yes, absolutely. I remember when I would fight, I had the mentality to like fight to death. They were just bullying now that I think about it as kids. But in my head, I was taking up all the pent up rage that I had towards my father. And I was just unleashing that every time I would fight, so it was really bad. And I think, yeah, now that I see people who they have the same kind of characteristics as I go to these prisons, as I see people on, like the Middle Ground Jubilee episode, I can see that actually there's a lot of rage inside of them. There's a lot of like uncertainty. There's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of just like sensitivity, and so I'm actually very sensitive to that because of that.
Is there any thought process that goes into that when you're 9-10 years old? At that point, are you being abused for a number of years already? Or?
Yeah. I remember the abuse started at 5 years old. So yeah, I was 5. I was getting beat up, dragged through through the rooms, hung upside down, pretty much getting whipped by the belt. I mean, it was a lot, and after that, I felt like it was normal. And honestly, a lot of in the Asian culture, a lot of people, Hmong people, Vietnamese people, Koreans, they all went through that. A lot of people that I was locked up with were all actually abused as kids. And, they were disciplined in this way because my father was also disciplined in that way too. My grandpa did the same thing to my father. It was a generational thing, definitely. Yeah.
And so what's going through your head? Like, what is that? How does that feel when you're that young and that's going on?
It was confusing at first. I just remember I was fearful of everything. Like I was scared to like come out the room. I was scared to like get bad grades. I was like very scared, but I also had so much like anger because of that.
Mm.
And I remember like just blowing up at every little thing. I couldn't play a game of basketball. I was a sore loser at everything. You know, I just couldn't handle my emotions, and I didn't understand why I was like that. So it was weird. It was like I was frustrated that I was frustrated. I was mad that I was mad, and I didn't understand. So even at the age of 10, I always felt like this emptiness, and I always felt like I didn't fit in with the regular kids, you know, and I would have like almost envy and like hate towards kids who would have good parents, you know, who would have, you know, people who bought them clothes. Cause I also grew up in Section 8 project housing, right, on the east side of Los Angeles. So also, you know, I was just very frustrated and I just remember it being very cloudy and very just like angry all the time and just lost at this. It was just a mix of emotions.
And so is that why you don't go to any other adults, like a teacher or something like that, and say this is going on because you just think this is normal at this point because it's all you know as a child?
Yeah, at that point, I just felt like it was normal. And I felt like people wouldn't, I don't know, I just felt bad. It was weird. Like I felt like it was wrong to like tell on my own father. I felt like it was just wrong because all my uncles, all my aunties, same thing. Like nobody ever really said much. Like we're not very expressive people, you know, Asian people. So I just remember like, oh, I can't go there. Like there was times where like cops would come, they would knock on the door and they would maybe hear my mom like screaming or something because she was getting hit. And then he would just be like, don't say anything. Right. And I'm just like, okay. You know, and I was more fearful of my father than I was the police. And so that was, it was definitely, it was very, very scary at that time.
When you're going through that, do you ever go to your mom and say, what is going on here? Why are we doing this? Or do you just kind of take it on the chin because you're seeing that she's dealing with the same thing?
Yeah, I actually, I resented my mom for a very long time. You know, I remember thinking like, why did she choose a man like this? Like, what's wrong with her? You know? And my mom, she was very submissive, you know? So she just was like, you know, that's just how dad is. And there was really, again, not much communication between even me and my mother. And because of the communication issues that we had, we were just, we were both just struggling. And even my brother, like I never really talked to my brother. You know, it would just be like orders, you know, it was like, bro, just sit there. Dad's tripping right now. You know, that's it. Like, it wasn't like, hey, what do you feel? How are you doing? How was your day? There was none of that. It was always like, be careful. Dad's coming in, bro. He's having a bad day. You know, be careful. Like, bro, don't do that. Dad already knows you're gonna, you know, what's gonna happen. And so it was very, it was very, very like confusing and just lack of communication, that type of environment.
That's so sad. I mean, how does that make you feel being a dad yourself today?
Honestly, it makes me, I think, a better person, you know, because I understand that everything is by grace. And what I mean by that is, you know, I kind of had to go through those things in order to kind of shape the person that I am. I think that, you know, it allows me to have this contrast and comparison where I know how to raise my kid based off of, you know, my experience with my parents, you know. Of course, I'm also stern with my child, but I don't try to, you know, impose anything on him. I try to let him like learn on his own. Definitely don't abuse him, you know. But I've learned that, at the end of the day, there is no manual for being a parent. Like it's just something that you just gotta do, you know. So I've since, you know, forgiven my father, and I think that's what I went viral for. That's what a lot of people know me for on Soft White Underbelly, De La Fe Testimonies, is that, you know, I've apologized, me, the victim, apologized to the aggressor, and that's what kind of changed and shifted the dynamic. My father today is a different person, you know, completely stopped drinking, goes to church with me. You know, I meet him once a week. We go out to eat, we go fishing. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, you know, but I wasn't able to do that without my pastor and without, honestly, my faith. So, yeah.
So when you get to 10 years old and you start with the aggressive behavior, the fighting, not yet in a gang, how does that all start? Is it that you finally blow up, all this anger comes out, you take these guys out and realize, oh, I can do this. I've got this power that I didn't know that I had.
Yeah.
Was there a clicking moment like that at some point where you got into one fight and realized, oh, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That I did get into one fight, and that one fight was the pivotal moment for me to not only recognize that again, violence was something that was, sadly to say, successful for me at that time, and it was
Hmm.
working, but I also kind of caught the attention of other people, and they were like, "Man, this kid fights like his life is on the line," And again, gangs are always looking for that crash dummy, as we say, that knucklehead who's willing to do everything and anything to represent the neighborhood. So, yeah, they noticed that and they gravitated towards me. They watched from afar at first, but then they started to kind of approach me. They tested me a little bit, obviously, in the beginning. And what I mean by that is like they hit you up, they bang on you, which means they ask you what gang you're from, just to see if anyone's, if you're from anywhere. And I said I wasn't. I'm from nowhere. And from then on, I started hanging out with them, and the rest was history, basically.
So, how are you exposed to these people, though? How do you even start meeting guys who are in that life?
So when I was 12, I started to see them. They were all over in the late 90s, early 2000s, LA was just full of gangs. That was like the Tupac, Biggie, Smalls era.
Mm.
Gangsta hip hop was just coming up, so it was influential in all cities in LA, all counties in LA as well, and even in Inland Empire and Orange County. So I would see them driving their little, we call them rice rockets. They're souped up cars, Acura Integras, Honda Civics. And these guys had the style, they had the money, they had the prestige, they had the respect, they had the power, they had the women. And so that was something that when I saw, I was like, I want to be a gangster, but I don't know how. I don't know the initiation process. I don't know anything about it. I just seen the lavish lifestyle that they lived. And so, yeah, when they actually hit me up, I remember I saw it almost as an opportunity. And when I hung out with them, my big homies, meaning my OGs, the heads of the gang, would take me out, feed me, buy me clothes, things like that. And so I was like, wow, these people are like my real family. They're better than my father. They're not hurting me. And I remember like having that heart of like, man, I'll die for my homies. I'll die for these people because they're the only ones. They show me more love than my own family. Right. So, yeah, from then on, it was just, I made that determination in my heart. Like, I'm going to do everything I want to do. Schooling, stuff like that, I'm not going to do. I'm going to be this gangster. So I went all in at 12 years old. I made that decision. And yeah, they just approached me. I was like, I want to do everything, raised my hand for everything, volunteered for everything, what we call knuckleheads. And that's what landed me in California Youth Authority and prison as well.
Now, when you said that you're always looking at this point in time to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's your number one priority.
Yeah.
Do you think that stems to some degree from going through so much pain for all those years on your way up? You're constantly feeling pain and suffering. I need to feel something on the extreme opposite.
Yeah.
Is that, do you think, where it comes from?
I think so. I think so. I think, definitely being told what you can and can't do, had an effect. But I think I just had this mindset to really trust myself because, I know that environment kind of has a big play and a role in shaping a human being. But I also had friends who grew up in the same areas that I was, and they ended up graduating UCLA, working for Deloitte, top 5 accounting firm. And I mean, so I think I do remember I always had this, I want to do what I want to do. Even at the age of 5, like my dad would hit me, like, I would still be like, no, I'm going to still do it. I want to do this. I want to do that. Fearfully around him. But once I like left the house, I just forgot about him. So I do remember having this type of mindset, like from a very young age, like Johnny's going to do what Johnny thinks is good. And whatever Johnny doesn't like, he's not going to do it. Like chores, I would like, even when I would be doing them, it's only because I was forced to. And I would like find ways to kind of wash only the top, not the bottom. I'd find these little shortcuts. So I was always like that as a kid, very cunning, very manipulative, very schemy, and very just trusting and believing all of myself. Because I thought if I did everything I wanted to do, I would be happy. And the things I didn't want to do just made sense to me. I'm not going to be happy doing them, so I'm not doing it. Discipline, chores, homework, I'm just not doing that. I'd rather cheat. I'd rather just do that. And I just had that mindset from a young age.
So it sounds like a little bit of a bad combination
Yeah.
of the perfect storm, because you had these traumas going on
Sure.
in your upbringing, but you also seem to have a little bit of a predisposition towards that
Yes.
type of an attitude. Let me ask you this. You said that you grew up with others who ended up having successful careers and
Yeah.
not being wrapped up in the criminal justice system.
Sure.
Was their family life any different than yours? Was their family setting any different?
Same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who's still talk to him till this day, my best friend. And yeah, he works for Deloitte. Another friend of mine went to Berkeley. All came out from the San Gabriel Valley, all came out from Section 8 project housing. Abusive fathers, or some of them didn't even have fathers, just a single parent household, just mom. Lost their parents to, father to gambling, addiction, stuff like that, but was also very abusive. The mother was abusive towards one of my friends, burned his hand. I mean, did all kinds of stuff, but he grew up to be successful. And I remember him because, when we were walking through the projects, he, the local drug dealer was like, "Hey, Johnny, let's smoke some weed." I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." It's 12 years old, and then I remember him going, "Oh, no, no, no. What if I get caught? My mom's going to whoop me. What if I get addicted?" And I remember me and the drug dealer just laughing at him like, "Bro, off weed? Are you kidding me right now?" But needless to say, he walked away, and he never ended up, going to jail like me. He doesn't have any record. He's graduated high school, graduated college, obviously, works for Deloitte. So I was able to see that just from that, he didn't trust himself. Like, he didn't trust his ability to not be an addict. Mind you, that this is when the crack era is heavy, and when people are still doing like meth and stuff like that. So we see in the projects meth heads, crackheads all over the place. And yet here's this stupid little 12-year-old. "Oh, I'm not going to be addictive. Like, I'm not going to be addicted to that. I'm stronger than that. I'm better than them." And this kid saw that and was like, "Ooh, like my uncle's on it, my cousin's on it. Yeah, and they're stronger than me. I don't think I'll be able, I don't have the willpower." And he just recognized that. So I do believe it was a mentality thing. It's more of like, do you trust yourself or do you not trust yourself? If you trust yourself, you're going to touch the drugs like I did. I touched the weed, went to meth, went to coke, went to everything else. He was like, "I'm not touching this because I think I'll get addicted." And for some reason, because of that, he didn't touch the drug. So he could never actually get addicted. If you don't touch it, there's no way to get addicted to it, right? So,
Sure.
yeah.
When you go into the meth and the coke, is that when you're 12 years old or later on?
Later on, 16 years old. And then, as I got out too, I was doing it for a little bit as well. So yeah.
Let's go back to that 12-year-old range. So you're involved with gang activity now. Is there any trouble with school, or they calling home and stuff like that, saying Johnny's in fights and Johnny's suspended and everything like
100%. Yeah, 100%. But the thing is, being that my parents were immigrant parents, they didn't really understand English.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so my dad was, like, "Johnny," and he's like, "Oh, no English." That was just his, "No English." "Yeah, but sir, we're trying to know English," because it was hard for him, and my mom understood more than him, but she was like, "Oh, okay." And, she would try to like go to the parent, teacher conference meetings or whatever. But again, the language barrier, it was, like I said, a perfect combination of just allowing me to just run wild. And I never really faced any repercussions, except for, obviously, my dad would be like, "You're suspended. Why are they telling you to stay home for like 4 days?" And I was like, "Because I got into a fight." And, "Oh, you like fighting?" Boom, boom, boom. And he'll beat me up,
wow.
So that's the only times. Other than that, he didn't really care about my grades. He didn't really care about anything. Like, he didn't understand any of that stuff.
Are they
Honestly.
picking up on the fact that you're hanging out with a different crowd by that time?
They didn't
Not
pick
at
up.
all.
Yeah, I was very good at masking it. I would bring change of clothes. I mean, I would, just go home and just be still submissive, but in my mind, like, having this end goal of like, I'm gonna make more money than my deadbeat dad. I'm gonna make more money than my submissive mom, and I'm just gonna move out. I'm gonna run away. I don't care about them. They're not my family. They're dead to me. So although I was living and existing in front of them, it was truly like a front almost.
Thanks for watching and being a part of the Mike G in the Morning family. You're not alone. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out one of the other videos suggested above.